Good morning. Let's do a little recap on Gene Rivers's listing clinic. Tell me what some of your ahas were. I want to kind of flesh out some of the things he talked about. Any quotes, any stats that surprised you, anything, any scripts that he said that that you liked or didn't like? Pretty assertive dude, isn't he? Is the thing working?
I didn't.
Right, I'll go.
Get to
Go ahead, Greta.
I wasn't there. I missed it, so I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say.
All
Well,
right.
I don't have my class notes in front of me right now, but I think that a lot of his stuff was really great. I don't know about doing the actual door knocking 3 or 4 times is going to be my thing.
Yeah, I think his discussion of that could be applied to like circle dialing as well, right? So you could, or what we call circle prospecting. So rather than knocking on the door and saying, hey, the Joneses, I'm under contract. Hey, we just sold. Hey, we just pinned it. You could call them and, leave a message or have that conversation with them. So
I think you're right. And I think maybe, or like if you're going to do it 4 times, do it every other one or something.
Right. And it's the real good takeaway from it is that it almost seems like overkill, but because the market is so strong, you can get the momentum from the fact that the market's really strong. So it's just a really simple, it's like literally it's like a less than a minute conversation. Hey, this is Bill, new listing right around the corner. Who do you know that wants to move into the area? I want to let you know that, you have an opportunity to pick your neighbors, right? And then a week later, you call back and you say, hey, it's me again. Home's already under contract and I got 12 extra offers. So have you considered selling? Do you know anyone that might consider selling? Right. And then, 30 days later, you come back and say, hey, it's closed. Now everyone's house in the neighborhood's worth more. You got any questions? Have you ever seen anyone working as hard as me? All right, I want to add you to my database. Right. Like he is a really assertive guy. Like I got some pushback last week or 2 weeks ago for having what I considered a fairly normal script. And this dude is like 20 times as aggressive as me. What did you guys feel about that?
Is that because of his success? Has he always been that way? Was he that way when he was first starting out? Or is he just like a take it or leave it right now because of his level of success?
He definitely had a lot of confidence.
I guess truly, I would say technically, I don't know the answer to that, but that's probably part of the reason why he was successful is because he was learning based. He was very driven. He understood what it took to be successful, and he understood what sacrifices he would have to make. And I think he said this the other day. I've heard him say it before, which is like, we're not being hired to be their friend. We're being hired to be their partner, to be their consultant. And especially, we're dealing with humans and stress and hearing no and all these kind of things. So there's going to be some moments that they don't feel like they're winning, right? And there's going to be some moments where they need to hear the hard truth, which is like, hey, that's like $100 plumber problem. That doesn't mean the house is falling apart. Okay. Like you're going to have to tell them sometimes stuff they don't necessarily want to hear. And avoiding that is not going to help you. Right. And so he has a bit of a, kind of in your face style. Do I think that's what caused his success? Yeah. Among thousands of other things. But it doesn't mean that if you're not that assertive, you can't be successful. I want you to hear that loud and clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my impression was he was very, very direct.
Yeah.
But it was almost as if it was borderline not offensive. Do you know what I'm saying? He like pushed it, but it wasn't over the line for me.
I don't think it was over the line, but yeah, I would agree with you completely, Donna. He was like toeing the line, but I mean, at the end of the day, like it makes sense. Like, hey, I've been to your house 4 times telling you about the neighbor's home, or I've called you 4 times. Like, I work this area. I mean business. I'm good at what I do. Doesn't it make sense that we should be in a relationship?
Well, I do think that some of his, maybe if that personality had come, might have been offensive, but I think that's his style. And that's, he's not leaving that house without a contract.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, he's probably bases his scripts and his speeches and things on who he's with. So while he's with us, he's very direct and that kind of thing. And he probably is as bold as he can be, but he's probably tailors it to whoever the client is.
I think
I
so.
don't-
For sure.
Mhm.
Right. If he's got a, yeah, I mean, that goes to personality profiles and behavioral styles and the way that the prospect wants to receive the information. Right.
I like that he was such a hard worker. He was, I mean, like when he's talking about, going in and checking the windows and the doors and cleaning out the refrigerator and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's great.
The biggest takeaway, I mean, I've seen Gene present, 30 times probably, but the biggest thing that I always love about Gene is that he makes it so obvious that we have to run businesses, right? The way that he gets all that stuff done is through systems. He said, if you want a business, it takes work. There's no way around it. We have to build it from the ground up, right? So when he talks about like what his listing manager does, or what his what did he say? He has like a division for bank assets or new construction or something like that, working with builders. Like everything is systematized down to like when the person can blow their nose. I mean, it's crazy, but it's necessary in order to have the type of results that him and his organization have had. Does that make sense? I love the line about, well, I can't do it. Yes, you can. It takes commitment and practice, and in KW, you can find all the help you need. Right? You either get reasons or results, right? I always love the idea of having like the myth and the truth, right? Winging a presentation is more natural than using scripts. No, mastering scripts makes your presentation more natural and more authoritative. So
Bill, my thought was when he showed us the pre-listing packet, that seemed pretty long.
Yes, I agree with that.
In comparison to even from when I took the night class. The style's a bit different.
I got to tell you, I feel like it was an older pre-listing packet. Like it still had the old KW logo on it. Like it looked a little dated in my opinion. My hunch is that he's working off a more modern one now. But I agree that it was way too long.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to be the one to tell Gene Rivers he's screwing up, but I think that some of the content in there was really important. I don't know that the pre-listing package needs like a definition of terms and stuff though. Like it's kind of like your resume, how your stats separate yourself from your competition, some testimonials, some evidence of success. I do like the idea of some disclosures, because if they start filling out the disclosures, it's a hint that they are getting closer to considering hiring you, right? I do like the idea of have 2 keys ready and that type of language. So you can get some hints at whether kind of how they're feeling about you in general. And I also like the part about the marketing plan, right? Kind of going through a little bit of the marketing plan and helping them understand that it's not about what their neighbors sold their home for. It's not about what they want, or it's not about what they paid for it plus what they put into it. That's not the value of the home. The value of the home is what a buyer is willing to pay for it. And dialogues around that also touches on the stuff like Like for example, I just got approved for a new roof on my house from wind damage. Okay, so it's a $14,000 roof. Does that make my home $14,000 more valuable now? No, no. They expect the roof to be serviceable. Now, as long as it works and it's not leaking, if I was being compared to another home and I had a brand new roof and the other home had a 10-year-old roof, and the roof age was important to them, they may choose me over the other house. But that does not give me $14,000 of more equity. Does that make sense?
It does, but they might pay you a couple $1,000s more or something just because it's like, well, the roof's a lot newer. And I know it's going to cost, over $10,000 to replace the roof, and the other one's almost at end of life, even though it's not leaking.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't think you're wrong there. It's hard to put that on an appraisal form though. So
Yeah,
gotcha. Sometimes it can get lost in the shuffle a little bit. And the reason why it might create more value is because the buyer actually buys it and pushes the price up. Right.
I was going to say that if there was like a multiple offer situation, that would maybe push the price up because someone would want a house with a new roof more so than a house that doesn't have a new roof. So if there were multiple offers, I could see it pushing it up.
It also depends on the timing, right? It also depends on under what market are you trying to sell the home in. I bought the home a year and a half ago, and you guys have heard the story of how I negotiated. I didn't give a damn what the roof looked like. I was buying that house, right? But if we try to sell that home in a strong buyer's market, then yeah, the roof will probably be more valuable, right? If we try to sell it in a strong seller's market, they'll be like, whatever, the roof, we just want the house. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other big takeaways from Jean's class?
Can I ask a question? You talked about disclosures in the pre-list packet. What is
Sure.
that?
So remember that a seller is going to need to fill out some disclosure statements to get the home ready for sale, or to in conjunction with getting the home ready for sale. Generally, I'll list those real quickly. The seller's property disclosure statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is essentially a history of the home from the mouth of the current owner. It asks things like, how old are the systems? Have there been any insurance claims filed? Does the home have a termite bond? Are there any electrical issues, plumbing issues, flooding issues? These kind of, what's included in the sale? Is like the flat screen included? Is the, fancy landscape lights included? All that kind of stuff, right? So that's the property disclosures, or seller's property disclosure statement. The next one is the community association disclosure statement. That's that's relevant or necessary if the home is in a community with an HOA, right? That has even if it doesn't have, if it has an HOA, it should be completed. Okay. So that you'll always see that. I shouldn't say always, but almost always see that in condo and townhome communities, and particularly when a single family home community has like some type of common areas, like if they have a common playground or they have a common pool or tennis courts or something like that, there's almost always an HOA, and there's almost always some form of fees and bylaws. That's the document that describes all of that. Okay. If the home was built prior to 1978, there should also be a lead-based paint disclosure. Okay. Lead-based paint disclosure. And those are the disclosures that when you're representing a seller, you need to make sure that they've prepared those. Okay. I'm going to come back to some more detail here in just a second. If you're representing the buyer, right, you want to make sure that you've reviewed those, or your buyer client has reviewed those. Okay. Now, I'm going to say something that I've said before, and I'm sure Melba would disagree with me on this, but it wouldn't be the first time we've disagreed. Here's the thing. I believe that it's your job as the agent to make sure the disclosure statement reads the way you want it to read. So for example, if you give the disclosure statement to the seller and they leave out the, switch plate covers, and they don't check the, the landscape lights or something like that, I think it's appropriate to go back to them and say, hey, it looks like you missed something. Is that correct? Right? So make sure, or if they say like, basement flooded, it doesn't flood anymore. That's not a very thorough way of explaining it. I would probably coach um, the seller to say something more like, professional remediators were paid, everything was, assuming it's true, right? All receipts available, no problem since, right? Something that's like, look, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm just trying to let you know it was done right, right? And these are things you might want to inquire if you're on the buyer side and you see a sloppy disclosure statement. Now, I will tell you that all parties are always looking for evidence of what the experience is going to look like. So if I'm on the seller side and I share a sloppy seller's disclosure statement, they're judging me, right? And it's just a pain to deal with it later. Let's just get the document the way it should read. You see what I'm saying? Like, we pretty much always know that they're going to include the switch plate covers. Let's just get them to check it, right? So in the heat of negotiation, we're not sorting out whether switch plate covers are included, right? And light bulbs are included and that kind of stuff, right? The other thing is, particularly with the HOA disclosure. Now, I want to make sure you guys are clear on something. Most HOAs have policies where they have to have a certain number of they have to have a I can't talk. They have to have a quorum to change things in the bylaws. So for example, if they, and it's very difficult to get a quorum more often than not, okay? So they have to have a certain number of people attend a meeting that own the properties in that community and vote for a certain thing. What do you think the likelihood of them voting for an additional HOA payment is? Not that good. Okay, it's hard enough to get them in the room. Okay, I was on the HOA board 10, 12 years ago, and we were like giving away TVs to try to get the people to come so we could vote on things like landscaping projects. But I mean, like, it's tough. Okay, so there's very unlikely that HOA fees are going up, which means that if the HOA needs extra money, they got to get it in a roundabout way. And generally the roundabout way that they get it, that they do not need approval on, more often than not, is like transfer fees, initiation fees, what they call capital contribution. I used to live in a townhome community that wanted 2 months of HOA fee just to show up, just to join, basically, right? So they're going to get their money. Now, if somebody bought, let's say Michael bought a townhome and he bought it 6 years ago and there was no transfer fee, or maybe there was a $200 transfer fee, but today they've passed some new thing or they've adopted some new policy and now the transfer fee is 3 times that. I don't want to tell the seller, or I don't want to tell the buyer it's 200 when it may be different. So I'm going to call as the agent and I'm going to verify all the stuff on there. And I'm going to get it in writing from the HOA. And if it's ultimately different than what the seller is telling me, I'm going to tell the seller to go fix it. Okay, because the paperwork is very, very clear now. It says if something is disclosed incorrectly and the fee ends up being higher than it was disclosed, the seller is paying for it. Okay, that doesn't mean they're not going to be pissed off about being asked to pay for it. And more than likely, that's going to come up at the closing table of a transaction where neither agent did their job and both agents are going to end up paying for it. Does that make sense? So if
It does. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one thing that I thought was interesting that Jean said yesterday, and that was, if you live in a neighborhood that you want to farm, do not join the HOA board. Volunteer, but don't take any leadership.
I think I could not agree with that statement more. Okay, could not agree with that statement more. That is so true, because you're gonna have to make tough decisions, and you're gonna have to send a letter that says, hey, you're not supposed to store your bike outside the door of the condominium, and that person's like, well, I'll never use you again. Right? Or like, oh, you're not supposed to fly your Auburn flag outside of the door because the HOA bylaws that were written 45 years ago say you're not supposed to do that. So do you mind taking that down? You're not going to make many friends, right?
Right, yeah.
But you know what people do like is people like, hey, you're going to drive the toy drive. I'm going to drive the toys over to the place that gets them. Right. I'm just going to volunteer. I'm going to pick up some trash around the tennis courts because the tennis courts should look prettier, don't you think? Who's going to argue with that? Right.
Yeah.
I think I've never heard anybody say that in any class ever. I think that's brilliant.
I was glad that he mentioned that, because my HOA board has been asking me for years to join.
Yeah, because you're a natural leader. They meet you and 2 seconds later, like, hey, can we give this woman a job?
And but I've been like, no. I've got too much going on. But then the last couple times I'm like, well, maybe I'll consider it. And so anyway, I'm glad I'm not on the board yet.
Yeah. I know, but I was on the board for a few years at my old condo. Terrible idea. You say, oh, well, this person's behind on their HOA fees. This person, this person's getting a divorce, so they can't pay their HOA fees. It's a nightmare. I don't want to know about that stuff.
Right.
All right. Anyone else want to mention anything from class yesterday?
Yeah. Sorry, I joined a little bit later, but and somebody may have already mentioned this, but the just the power of the pre-listing packet.
Yes.
And then the objection handlers, and specifically the one that I could have used possibly just this past week, which was about going with a friend, an agent. So I had presented a listing agreement or a listing presentation last week, and they just told me this week that they were going with a longtime friend, a family tie, somebody who had sold their daughter their home. And so I would probably need to practice that script a few times before I can feel confident about delivering it, because it's still a little murky, but the whole idea about co-listing, because she's with a different brokerage. And so, how would that work? Or how could I even, because it's in my neighborhood, could I even say, hey, listen, because I sent them a note saying, thank you for your time. And although I regret we couldn't, we can't work together, blah, 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 blah. It'd be nice if I could still host an open house or something. But being at that it's a different brokerage, probably not likely.
Yeah, probably you're right. That's a tough one when it's somebody at a different brokerage. That's pretty much not going to work at all. The goal is really just to create doubt, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Are you choosing that this particular woman because you found that she's the most qualified to serve as your partner in this big transaction after you interviewed all the other agents that you were made aware of, or are you selecting this person because you happen to know them?
What they said was your approaches and plans were very similar, and it was almost the same.
Yeah.
So we just, since we've known her longer, and it's kind of a a family tie, and kind of feel we had reached out. If he said, if you were the first one, then we would have gone with you. So I mean, and I was like, well, just for the record, I was trying to get in with you for a while.
I would say, look, I know a lot about all that interaction. I think my personal opinion is you did the best you could, and you just didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
So, when you're encountering that type of situation, honestly, I never pushed it that hard. I'm not saying I did the right thing. I just was an abundance person, and when I was getting a bunch of pushback, I would put a little doubt in their mind, and then I'd move on.
Mm-hmm.
Can I? I'm sorry. I thought that the way Jean approached it, and I may have taken this way off base, but the way he approached it, he really wasn't going to co-list with the other person. He was going to give the other person a referral fee.
Right, you're right.
Right.
Diane.
So he was telling them that he would, but more what he was trying to say is, well, I am going to take them under my wing. Like in the case where they maybe were hesitant because they thought the other person wasn't as experienced or wasn't as whatever. And this was his way of saying, well, they'll get some money, you know, because the minute the seller hears that the other person will get a referral fee, then they know that the other person's going to get some money. So if it's like a kid and they just want to help the kid out, they're going to be helping the kid out because the kid's going to get some money. That's how I took it. And that's how I took it. It didn't have to be at his agency.
Yeah,
A referral would not need to be at his agency, a referral fee, and you know, quote, taking him under his wing, like, you know, maybe he could come to the inspection or something, and that's not a big deal. Or maybe he could listen in on a couple of the negotiation conversations or something like that, so he could, you know, learn, right? I think the question is to dig, the goal is to dig enough at that decision to determine why they are selecting that other agent, right? Is it because, oh, it's little Johnny's first real estate transaction? So does it make you nervous in any way? Do you have any concerns whatsoever that little Johnny doesn't have the experience in multiple offer situations and working with other home vendors and negotiating against the powerful agent? You know, do you have any concerns about any of that? And if they say, no, I don't have any concerns, little Johnny can handle it. Honestly, I'm not telling you not to fight that, but again, I just assume go find a different listing.
mhm.
Yeah, I just don't think that was his example. I think his example was more about the ones you could fight.
Right. To be honest, I was in and out. That this particular moment is a moment I did not hear. But it all is going to come down to more and more inquiry, right? To really get into it. So if they've got a lot of doubt, say we could do something like Diane's suggestion, which is, you know, I'd be open to a partnership or referral opportunity. So, you know, this particular person can get some extra experience and can get compensated, and you'll have the experience and the reputation and the opportunity to work with me.
But I don't think that it was that the other agent was, you know, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, that the other agent was inexperienced, that was the reason. Because as an inexperienced agent myself, I wouldn't have much ground to stand on in arguing for my own agency. So other than to just transfer the skills I have, which I would do that, but
And you probably communicated that. But had you been a 15-year real estate agent with hundreds of sales, you probably would have been.
I would have boasted that more. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
and you would have had a better shot at being selected. But in this scenario, you guys were relatively similar, and it just is what it is.
Yeah. Diane, I was just kind of taking his example and applying it to my situation, and that's why it kind of came out that way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I just for the other people too, that maybe didn't hear it, or just to
Thank
get their opinion, because I thought the way Gene was presenting it was that he was the more experienced, like when he was suggesting you do this, when you push, is when Bill said that they have doubt, and that they were, the example that I heard him use was about a nephew or something that just got into real estate.
Okay. Yeah, it could have been, and I just didn't hear that, but I think to Bill's point, whatever the situation is, it's just creating doubt. It's finding that hole and poking it and just amplifying that area of doubt is all it is.
Yeah, I like that. Find it, poke at it. It's like turn the knife a little bit and move on. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So let's do a tiny bit of housekeeping on the schedule. Today from 12 to 1 is going to be our success series in this room. Our guest is going to be Heather Hare. Heather is, has had the best year of her career this year in the middle of COVID by far. She's got an awesome story to tell. The two of us have been working together for a little while, and let's see. So she is going to be from 12 to 1 today, and then from 1 to 1:30 we'll do the launch mastermind, and then of course we have farming from 1:30 to 3:30 with the 36-12-3 course. Next week, I sent out the schedule for next week last night. We do have a new agent retreat. I want to encourage everyone that is new. I don't know exactly what their terms are, but I would venture to say, yeah, I think everyone should go to that. Yep, everyone should go to that. Even somebody like Ty, who's been in the business for a while, there's going to be a lot of KW stuff. I think that'll be good opportunity for you. That's Tuesday from 1 to 2:30. 1 to 2:30 next Tuesday. And
is that in the office, Bill?
on it, I'm not actually positive. Venus, that will not be the same link. That is not my program. That's not a PC program. It's just the Market Center program. So that unless you're told otherwise, every training is on kwroswelltraining.com. Okay. And that's a link to the Zoom room. Okay. Please don't forget the survey. I've got surveys from about half of the group, and I very much appreciate you guys taking a couple minutes to go through that, and your numbers as well. One thing I want you guys to be really thinking about is there's a couple of questions in there that were very pointed, okay? And I will be bringing them up to you individually multiple times in 2021, which is, what is the number one professional goal you have? What is the number one personal goal you have? You most likely are going to need to do some schedule adjustment, mindset adjustment, motivation adjustment, that kind of stuff to get there. And that's really what I'd like to help you with, right? That's my job as your coach and your partner to get you there. One other thing from Gene Rivers that I heard multiple times is the stuff on the scripts. Okay, the stuff on the scripts. I cannot help you understand enough how important studying the scripts are. I actually thought it was kind of nice. I mentioned that I went back and watched the meeting with Donna and I. That meeting was from sometime in March. And Donna, you have committed. I don't know if you committed that day or not, but you have become quite a script practicer, haven't you?
I think
Yeah,
so.
we
Yeah.
do practice.
And as a result, those conversations are more natural, and you have a lot more confidence in going to pursue the buyers and the sellers and asking the tougher questions and digging in a little bit more. Tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? Right? What happens when that happens? Right?
Yes. I think it's more than just role playing with your partner, though. I think it's a commitment to spending time yourself trying to memorize the scripts, so that when you're in a conversation, even when you're thrown a curveball, you remember to get back on point. There are certain points you want to hit. So it kind of applies to every conversation, as long as you're hitting your points. You know, it might not be verbatim, but you remember to hit all the points.
Yeah, I mean, I remember coming into the office. You know, oftentimes when I was TL, I'd walk in. I was one of the first in the office, and I'd walk into the back training room, and we used to have an agent that would walk around and scream the scripts. He'd just walk around like this, screaming the scripts in the big training room, and he'd say them really, really fast and really, really loud, and he'd say them like hundreds of times. And now he has an insanely incredible business. All right, I'll end on this thought. He talked about this with respect to for sale by owners, but I believe that this applies for all prospects. Your prospects will hire the most helpful and persistent agent. The most helpful and the most persistent agent. So I want you to think to yourself, how can I turn up the notch a little bit on the helpful side? And how can I turn the notch a little bit on, or the dial, notch doesn't make any sense, does it? Turn the dial on the helpful side and turn the dial on the persistent side, right? Now, both of those things require systems and they require intentionality, right? So again, you should be a consumer of data and articles and information and metrics and stats and all this stuff, because that's what the public wants, right? They also want relationships and referrals for vendors and all that stuff. So when you're spending time growing your audience, so to speak, your network, you can be more helpful to your consumers. When you have smart plans and calendars and reminders and ticklers and all that kind of stuff, then you can be more strategic and consistent with your communication, which is what they want. Okay. Unfortunately, when we make mistakes, they're expensive, right? We make a mistake and we don't call somebody when they say they want to be called, that could be 20 grand right there. They're expensive. So going into the new year, when you're setting your plan up, what is that going to look like to make sure that there's nothing that slips through the cracks? Right? I've been showing a lot of you guys kind of my system, so to speak, and it has, like, every day I've got my day planner, right? So that's where all my ideas go, and that's where all my reminders go. And then I've got my calendar, which is where all my appointments go. I'm not saying you got to do it the way I'm doing it, but that's kind of the way that I've basically figured out how to work with my brain. Is if it's time sensitive, it goes here. If it's not so time sensitive, it goes here. Time sensitive, I'm talking about, it has to happen at 2 o'clock. But if it needs to happen on this day, it doesn't go on the calendar, it goes on the planner, right? That makes sense?
Yep.
All right, let me just check the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, Venus, just watch out for, go into our page here and see if anyone is interested in an additional role play partner or script practice partner. And we'll talk about shadowing opportunities offline. And then I want to also remind you guys of this. I'll post it in the announcements right now. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 to 10:15, we have a high accountability group through GLG, Georgia Legacy Group. The idea there is it's a super fast Zoom meeting from 10 to 10:15, and we go around in a circle like this, and we'd say, Michael, what have you done in the last 48 hours to create a client, and what do you intend to do over the next 48 hours to create a client? Donna, your same question. Corey, same question, right? And then 2 days later, you say, okay, you remember how I said I was going to drop off 50 short CMAs? I did that, and I met 3 people. One's already under contract. Okay, and I'm hosting 2 open houses this weekend, and I'm sending out handwritten notes to everybody. Okay, 2 days later, you're getting in, you're talking about how that happened and what you're intending to do. Again, no one's taking attendance. I know, Tawantis, you were doing that for a while. I don't know if you're on able to speak, but did you find that to be helpful?
Actually, I love it. Let me just say that I love it. But now when I switched my schedule to do the lead generation, I just didn't want to break the pattern and leave at all from what I was doing to doing something else. But I really did appreciate what Robert does and how he motivates us to do and stay on track in that group. I miss it, honestly.
Right. And I think the biggest takeaway from Robert's activity is it's kind of a self-evaluation of all of your efforts, and all of your efforts should generally be around client creation. Here's what I'm doing today, or at this moment, getting me closer to a client, right? Am I building a relationship? Am I deepening the relationship? Am I attempting to form a relationship? Or am I just doing everything I can find to do to prevent me from doing the client creation stuff? Because it's a little harder and it's a little bit more stressful, right?
Yeah.
Make sense?
What's your thoughts on that since we're doing lead generation, by the way? Like, should we
What's my
just,
thoughts on the 10 to 10:15?
yeah, like, should I chime in and give him my goals like at another time offline, or what do you think?
If you, how do I want to answer that? If you feel that that would help you, by all means.
Okay.
If I think part of the experience is hearing other people's ideas and seeing other people execute on those ideas, and not only getting the ideas but getting the inspiration. However, whatever works for you to keep you on track, you should do, to keep you,
Okay.
high level motivation. I hate to say it, I do kind of like your idea about not interrupting the flow, though. The question is what brings a bigger benefit, right? Does the benefit of not interrupting the flow exceed the benefit of watching your peers and expressing what you're up to? Which one is
Yes.
more valuable to you? And I
Yes.
would encourage you to reconsider that all the time, because you may find that it's worth it to make that interruption, because you get more value from that, right? So it could be, your break, it could be your 15-minute break. And I make calls for an hour, and then I take a 15-minute break, and I make calls for another hour. So look, I was taught a long time ago. I have told this story before. Like, I went to a new home construction neighborhood, and I was a little early because I wasn't familiar with the neighborhood, and I wanted to see everything before my client showed up. And I looked at the first model home, and I saw it, and I walked through it, et cetera. And I went to the second model home, and it was smaller, and it was, in my opinion, a less desirable floor plan. And I said to the on-site agent, I said, wait a second, so this is $20,000 more expensive than this? And she said, yeah. And I said, I was a 25-year-old idiot back then. And I said, okay. And she says, Bill, some people like salmon, some people don't like salmon. And I'll never forget that line, right? We just don't know what people are attracted to, right? Some people like a floor plan that I wouldn't find to be appealing. And I like some stuff that other people wouldn't find to be appealing. So we want to stay out of judgment and stay in curiosity, so that we can really get to the bottom of why these people want to do what they want to do. And then our job is to be the service professional that wows them every step of the way and continues to build a big business as a result. Make sense?
Can I add something?
Yeah.
For Tawantis, I think that maybe you could play with the idea of, sending your results and just kind of like treat it as a research project, and track your results and see which one is more efficient and effective for you, and then just continue with however that works for you.
Exactly.
Because I think that's you have to go, if you're in a flow state with you're making your calls, and that's giving you the results that you need, and you can send your accountability information to Robert on the side, then if that works, that's great. But if you need to change it up, or maybe it's something where you switch it up every so often, I don't know, you can play with it.
Yeah, exactly. Very few decisions that we make are permanent. Very, very few. All right, you guys.
I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, one thing I'm really enjoying in this group is the help that you each are giving to each other. That is, it really makes me proud. So I can't say this enough, you guys. I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend the mornings with you, and the opportunity to spend to be involved in the growth of your business, and to help you handle the successes and handle the stumblings. And I want to really, really encourage you to be on the call today between 12 and 1, and let's make give Heather a nice audience. She's worked incredibly hard this year, and she's got an amazing story, and I'd love for you to hear it. So I will see you at 12 o'clock.
And thank you, Bill, for everything you do.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Real.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. All right.
Have a great day.